In today's video, I make a hole in the wall, I carve a few bricks, I paint cheeses, also I try to make a stained glass windows, furthermore I start a fire, and lastly I paint boots. Hello fellow modelers! I have recently embarked on exciting gun carrier Mk1 project in 72 scale, and I promised to create a diorama for it, so let's get started. I sketch out some fundamental concepts using Blender, which primarily helped me establish the dimensions. I also downloaded and print out the references. I'm constructing a base frame using balsa wood because it is a soft material that is easy to cut and handle. I aim to keep the base dimensions as compact as I could, but given the size of a gun carrier, I ultimately had no choice to set them 15 to 19 centimeters. Okay, let's make the church. I use Gothic castle Eupen as an inspiration, situated near the borders of the Czech Republic and Germany. However, my version will be much smaller. I like using this lovely orange carving foam from AK to create the walls. It is similar to pressed sawdust, and I find it much more enjoyable to work with than extruded polystyrene. The foam is easy to cut, sand and carve, allowing for all sorts of textures. On the downside, it's more delicate, so it can break quite easily if you are not careful. I am assembling the parts using slow-drying superglue, but you can opt for PVA glue if you prefer. To secure the entire structure to the base, I prefer using a styrene board. Now you can see how simple it is to carve a needed shape from this material. I created 3D designs for various building materials and details, including Gothic windows, floor tiles, roof tiles and decorative cornices. This makes the construction process a bit more straightforward. The 3D printable files are available for my Patreons and on Cult3D. I use 2 large frames and 1 small. I must measure everything for the best result. It is tricky to fix holes if you make them bigger or at angle. Creating cornices at this scale can be quite a challenge, but 3D printing has made the process much easier. I designed a small bricks, which now allows me to assemble it like a Lego set. I use a micro grinder to trim some corners, but ultimately I found that printing bricks at angles was a far better approach. Also, it proved to be much more accurate. I am using acrylic putty to fill in small gaps and seam lines. While Vallejo putty works well, it has a rubber consistency, so I recommend opting for more affordable acrylic construction putty instead. This alternative tends to create a thinner layer that is more delicate and easier to trim. Alright, now comes the funny part. I need to shape the stones and carve each one of them. I need to approach my work with care again and gently take away the material. I am using a metal file to smooth out the edges. I am currently cutting lines that resemble stones blocks, but as the stones come in various sizes, I am working to keep them looking a bit inconsistent. Despite the height being relatively consistent, I created a simple measuring tool that ensured uniform sizes. It may seem simple, but crafting all the lines actually took us several hours. Did I already mention that I want a ruin? What a nice church it was. I'm taking down random walls and also breaking apart window frames. Ruin has its charm, but there is a small concern I need to address. I also have to focus on developing the internal texture and structure. That means I will be doing even more stone carving. The stone texture feels overly smooth, which I found unappealing. After years of weathering, the block should have a developed more rugged feel. Stone and force are excellent for creating a rough texture that I am aiming for. When you press the stone into the foam, it will replicate the stone's rough texture. I made minor error while trying to unify the surface of a diluted gypsum plaster. Unfortunately, I end up filling the lines. As a result, I had to recreate all the lines again. On the bright side, I learned that I could take the step, but after painting. I used an airbrush to apply the base layer because it allows me to create a soft layers and achieve the basic shading effectively. The sprayed layer is too uniform, so consider painting some stone blocks in darker or lighter shades. You can use grey, beige or brown paints to achieve this look. The moss adds a lovely touch, making the texture more visually attractive. The difference between using paintbrush shading and not using it. The church slightly extends the base edges. It is essential to have it in one line. I have created a mixture for the terrain that includes gypsum plaster, sawdust, PVA glue and water. You can also add a dry pigment to give it some color. However, this layer is primarily meant to fill in the edges and hide the unattractive grey base. It feels like something is missing in the interior design. Yes, something like this arc. So I made a new wall. I discovered that this small revel saw is far more effective for carving than thin blade. Since the base layer is dry, I prepared the same terrain mix again, this time using a dry pigment. I am shaping the excess balsa frame to create a smooth transition to the edges of the terrain. I decided to make some stones a little bit darker. This church is late Gothic, so I decided to make a roof only from wood. Many Gothic churches have an arch, but this would be complicated and my reference church also didn't have it. I used beams made from balsa wood. Having an intact roof would certainly make things simpler. I could just print all the roof tiles as a single piece and attach them to the model. Instead, I have to place each tile one by one. I choose to print floor tiles since they are only 6 by 6 mm in size. While it's possible to cut them from styrene boards, printing them proves to be a much more simpler option. I prefer using PVA glue because it allows me to easily clean up any excess putty with a water and cotton swab. I also came to the conclusion that it would be simpler to spray each tile before putting them together. Also, I could print them using black and white resin. If I decide to create some mosaic in the future, I will approach it differently. Now I must carefully paint tiles with a paintbrush. When you try something for the first time, you often discover ways to make it much easier next time. I realized that gypsum plaster wouldn't work well for my project, so I decided to get some industrial acrylic putty. I mixed it with water and added pigment to achieve the desired color. The drying time is much slower, it has a smoother consistency and it can be easily cleaned with water. I'm filling the gaps once more. This time I have painted all the walls, so this putty will act as a substitute for the building mortar. I am cleaning residual putty with water. The result after drying looks promising. The roof tiles are crafted from slate, which is why I chosen this dark shade. The highly diluted oil paint functions much like a mordant. The acrylic putty is quite bright, so I need to refresh the colors using highly diluted clear varnish. The landscape around the church still appears quite bland. To enhance it, I use stones, gravel and static grass. Once again, PVA glue works well for attaching the details. I created turfs just using my fingers, so there is no need to invest in pricey products. I'm not a fan of a flat terrain. I can break up this uniformity by creating a large crater from an artillery strike. You already know my mix for the ground texture. However, if you are looking for the rougher finish, just toss in some extra sawdust. How about deepening the crater? The frame is made from soft material and the base can be easily cut. So I can now remove even more material with ease. I preserved some material from crushing the church walls. Now it is handy because I can use stone blocks as a debris. I must not leave out some fallen roof tiles. I had the idea to incorporate Jesus with a cross into my project. I came across a lovely printable figure of Jesus on Cult 3D, and I can create a simple cross using balsa wood. I use acrylic paint, which are great for paintbrush, layering and dry fast. This detail was missing. Now let's make more debris around to make this image even deeper. I'm spraying the stones with a black paint, which makes a deep shading if I miss some areas with a paintbrush. The best way to imitate burn and damaged wood is to burn it. I mixed oil paint with an enamel thinner, which makes the wood darker. I wanted to create a burn effect again, but I forgot that I used enamel thinner and I didn't allow it to dry properly. Okay, note, do not combine enamel thinner and lighter. The safer solution is to paint with weathering. The roof is uniform, so I made a similar effect like with the bricks. I paint them randomly with a different shades. The dry brush is excellent for highlighting ground texture. And shading with a dark earth pigment mixed with a PVA glue. I smooth the edges using fine sandpaper, And now I am ready to bring everything together with a coat of black paint. I use dry pigment, which nicely creates accumulated dust. Also, I applied a pigment fixer to the surface, which works as a binder, so you cannot blow away the pigment after drying. I had some ideas for creating stained glass windows with a transparent paints, but when I found this lovely printed stained glass on the clear foil. It is made by RT Diorama. It is designed for 35 scale, but the small windows are also suitable for 40A or 72 scale. It is lovely, but I must also add a frame from the opposite side. I cut out small broken pieces and added them to the crushed window. The window should have suffered significant damage from the nearby explosion. I like the image, so I decided only for minor damage. I cannot forget add small shards of glass on the floor. I like static grass, but it is handy to add more vegetation to make it more versatile. I enjoy using dry grass or moss, which I discovered in the local forest. There are also many great materials available for creating railroad models. I am imitating wet mud with a mix of gloss acrylic varnish and pigment. The diorama is nearly complete, but there is one crucial aspect still missing. I need to add some figures. They will breathe life into the entire scene and help tell a story. I had a hard time finding decent miniatures in 72 scale, until I stumbled upon fantastic 3D printable set of British Army figures created by Alphonse Marcel. I use black as a base and white layer makes the basic shading. I have recently purchased new Army Painter speed paints. I mainly use them for my wargaming miniatures, but the skin tone is also quite useful for editing intricate details to smaller models. I am painting the rest of the acrylic Vallejo paints, which I have diluted using both the water and acrylic thinner. The addition of acrylic thinner helps achieve a smoother and more even layer. You can see that the layer is partly transparent. The second and other layers could be less transparent. I am making deeper shading or highlights. I adjust the scale of the figures to 72 scale and print them out. After fine-tuning the settings of my new Lego Saturn IV, I was thrilled to achieve such detailed prints. I let print map on professional laser printer to achieve smooth result. I'm not well versed in painting figures, so it took me a while to complete one. Now I have 6 more to go. The detail matters, therefore I'm trying to focus on each figure separately. The final touch involves highlighting the faces. I have to be careful not to overdo it or use too much paint. Since I do not work with a magnifying glass, I am generally pleased how it's turned out. I have realized that having high quality figures with fine details is crucial, otherwise it becomes quite challenging to paint a flat face beautifully. The acrylic putty eliminated the moss effect, so now I must decorate the effect with the oil paint. The green subtly disrupts the uniform texture of the stone. One of the final touches is dry ivy. I have a lovely product from Diorama Presepe, which offer an excellent selection of diorama products, including this delicate mesh adorned with tiny leaves. Okay, I'm done with this detail, and I have to say it's been a while since my last diorama project. This one was a bit of a test to see if I still had it in me. What do you think? Would it be worth it to take on more projects like this in the future? I have plenty of exciting ideas and I can wait to bring a few of them to life. The gun carrier MK1 finally has a proper home, which adds a whole new level of appeal and realism to the model. Now you can see the complete scene all put together. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to my Patreons for their incredible support. See you next time!